Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I have an interesting laptop, and it is called the ASUS Pro Essential. This one in particular is the P53E, and the specific type is the XH51. Now, the reason that I find this laptop so interesting is not the specs, and it's not because there's really anything special about it whatsoever, but it's an interesting marketing experiment. And here's what I mean. When this thing came out, and all over the website, it has very proudly stated several very interesting facts. For example, they state that this has gone through a drop test, a hinge test, a pressure test, and features essentially a ability to protect the hard drive during drops and other bumps and shakes. And that's really cool. And you immediately look for information about the tests, whether or not it was like one of the military standard tests or really anything. And that's where things get particularly interesting with this ASUS, is it looks like they were very much trying to compete with other commercial brand laptops, but there were a few pieces of information that kind of make it suspicious. And I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way, but like genuinely eyebrow-raising how they have written this information. And I imagine that a conversation between, say, someone selling this laptop and someone buying this laptop to go a little bit something like this. So I see this laptop's been drop tested. How high can it actually, withstand a drop?
Well, that's a great question. It's actually double the height of a conventional laptop.
Wow, that sounds impressive. What's the height?
Double the height.
Yeah, but exactly how high is double the height?
Well, it's twice as much as the other one.
Okay. You know what? Forget it. Let's talk about the hinge test. I heard that this actually withstood some pretty decent hinge testing. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. This actually surpassed the conventional, regular consumer-grade laptop.
Okay, that's really cool. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it means it did better than a consumer-grade laptop. So this is better.
Okay, I understand that it's better, but how much better? Like, are we talking a little bit better, a lot better? What was the test exactly?
Well, it was surpassed, and that's the best part.
Okay, you know what? Forget it. Forget I even asked that question. I heard that this underwent pressure testing, so it can handle more pressure on the lid, and the lid looks really thick. So can you tell me more about how well it did on the pressure test?
Absolutely. I've got some hard data here. The pressure test was 20% more than a conventional laptop.
Okay, 20% more what?
Yep, 20% more.
You know what? I'm seeing a trend here. I think I'll come back later.
Hey, wait, don't go.
Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is that we know that it's double the height, but we don't know the original height. We know the hinge surpassed the consumer test, but we don't know by how much or what the test was. And the pressure test was 20% more, but we don't know how much of that 20% it is more of. Without baseline numbers, this is just cute marketing. Anyway, let's talk about the specs of the machine itself. You are looking at a 15.6-inch display that unfortunately only comes in 1366 by 768, which I suppose if you're a strictly business consumer, then you're okay. But realistically, that's not very good, especially for a large screen. The CPUs that came with these were either an i3-2310M, an i5-2430M, or you could also get a very budget Pentium dual-core B940. RAM was DDR3, 1333 MHz, and 8 GB was the maximum. Depending on the CPU, you had Intel HD 3000 graphics, and you had a 6-cell 56 watt-hour battery option. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at some ports. But before we do, let's take a look at the pictograms on the lid here, which do show the pictograms here, but the LEDs are beneath. So once this is closed, you can't see the pictograms, but you will be able to see the LEDs, but when it's open, unless you look down, you can't really see the LEDs. Interesting design choice. Very firm clicky buttons. There's essentially no travel. They just click. Moving to the left-hand side, we have a huge exhaust fan. We've got the power plug, our Ethernet, VGA, HDMI, USB 2.0. Along the back we have absolutely nothing. And then on the right hand side we have the Kensington lock slot, a DVD drive, two USB 2.0, and a separate headphone and microphone jack. Lastly, on the front we do have a SD card reader. We can also see grills that are not symmetrical for two front slightly downward firing speakers. One of the other features that this laptop oddly enough has is a place to put a business card. It's an interesting idea, I suppose, if you have a lot of the same machines in the same room. So with that being said, let's quickly do a short disassembly. There really isn't much to talk about. We've got two battery catches up here at the top to release the battery. And again, it's a 56 watt-hour stick. And to gain access to all the serviceable components, we have two screws on the bottom. And once those have been removed, we can push this cover forward and take it out. Over here, we do have our 2.5-inch drive bay secured down with 4 screws. Over here, we have the Wi-Fi card, and we have 2 RAM slots, and only one of them is currently occupied. And this has 4 out of the 8 gigabytes that this machine can hold in total. A few things that you will notice that are not immediately available are things like the CMOS battery and a few other serviceable components. To take this down even further requires the removal of all of the screws along here in the bezel and pop in through the keyboard, I believe. But we're not going to be doing that today because there's really not much else to talk about with this thing. So I'm going to put it back together, turn it on, and draw some conclusions. All right, with everything back together, let's go ahead and turn it on. All right, looks like it had a few updates to do before booting in. So we can say that that time probably wouldn't be quite that long. However, it must be said that this is a pretty unremarkable experience to use. It is a little slow, and realistically, if you can find one of these units, they're not going to be any more expensive than $200. And in a non-working condition, they'll obviously be less, but do keep in mind parts for these are not incredibly common. So just temper your expectations if you're buying one that's non-functional that you're going to try and fix up, that might be even more trouble than it's worth. These things truly are unremarkable. This thing has its highest, brightest setting, and it's essentially unviewable from the angle that I'm currently at, although it looks pretty good in the camera. The touchpad is what it is. Right and left click work fine. The keyboard supposedly won an award, so it's not the worst thing I've ever typed on. Far from perfect, though. I'm really not too sure why the 1 and the 6 key have those white circles over them. That there doesn't appear to be any real reason for that. And beyond that, honestly, it's a very forgettable machine. The most interesting thing about this whole thing, in my opinion, was actually the marketing that went on here. Everything from the drop test to the hinge test to the ice cold or ice cool keyboard that they sport. Because honestly, the CPU in here has so much mass to dissipate heat, plus a cooling solution, that if the keyboard got hot, then something has gone incredibly, incredibly wrong. I don't imagine anyone's going to be finding one of these anytime soon, but if you do, it is not the worst machine. However, I think that there might have been a misalignment between what they were designing and what marketing was hoping to sell. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the quick look at this. And if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. And as always, I am going to encourage you to do the big 4. Please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because you never know what's going to show up on this channel or the weird and interesting stories that might exist. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.